Hello. So today I wanted to address an issue that comes up very frequently in my office. Whether it's a couple that's getting engaged or currently engaged, or a couple that's already together. And that is, what do you do when your partner follows a different religion than you follow? Now, this doesn't have to be specific to any religion, right? Or even a large world religion. Could be one of you is a humanist and the other person is Catholic. The other one of you is Buddhist, the other person is evangelical Christian. One of you is Muslim. One of you is atheist or agnostic. There's a lot of different pairings that come up here. And you might be thinking, as you're hearing this, that there's no way I would ever end up with someone that believes something different than I do. And that's true for a lot of folks. I've also found that, as often happens, love transcends some of our ideas or values or things that we think before we meet somebody that we care deeply about. And folks from different religious backgrounds and different faiths find each other and fall in love and believe that they can have a good life together even though they have different beliefs. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you are in the camp where you decided to be with someone in your own faith group, that's awesome. And this video is probably not going to be as helpful for you. But if you are in a position where you love somebody or you're with somebody where you have different beliefs, then that's what we're going to address today. So there's three main things that I think you got to figure out. One being values, two being community, and three being family when it comes to having different beliefs. And I should say, right, I'm coming from the perspective as a therapist that this can work, right? You can make this work, and I've seen many couples that have different beliefs and even really strongly held beliefs that have happy marriages, right? So that's what I'm focusing on. Is like, how do we have a happy marriage, with different beliefs? Starting point, right, before we get into the other 3 points I'm going to make, is that you don't evangelize your partner, right? You don't spend time or energy trying to convince your partner to believe what you believe, right? People do convert for partners. That happens. What I found is that happens best when it is not something that is forced, right? So that's the starting point. We're not going to talk about how you convince your partner to believe what you believe here, right? And I find that to be actually, the least helpful thing you can do, right? But talking about what is it that you can do when you have these different beliefs. So the first thing is figuring out values. Oftentimes people equate their beliefs, their religion, with guiding their morals and ethics, right? Now, what I find usually is that if you are with somebody, you found someone that you love, you care deeply about, usually you share a lot of values already. Whether or not you assign those to, those values that are coming from your faith and your kind of background within your faith or not, usually you share a lot of those things. And you might want to just ask, like, what values do each of our beliefs espouse and put forward that are different in any way, right? Is there anything that's going to be a real problem? Right, and you might want to look at that, right, and talk about those things in a more significant way. So aligning on values is the first step, right? Okay, you are Catholic, I am Christian. What do we share? Is there anything significant that we don't share, right? And if there is, then let's try to address that either with a therapist or by kind of digging in further to that, right? A couple one time I was working with, it was like, we got into 10 rounds around, transubstantiation. Like, if you're doing the communion, is that actually the body and blood of Christ? That may not be as important of a value compared to some other things, right? So that's the first thing to figure out is, like, where is there any kind of misalignment when it comes to values, and how do we address that? So that's what you do when you try to address values. The second point I want to make is around community, right? For most folks, their faith and their beliefs, are shared with a community of people, right? Whether that's a global community or their local community, like a church or a mosque or a synagogue that they worship in. That's a huge part of faith, right? And real benefit to participating in a broadly held belief. So you got to figure that out, right? If we are going to be together, how are we going to find shared community if we don't have this this shared belief, right? And that can look like all sorts of different things, right? So it could be like, hey, we each go to different church events on a Sunday, and then we go to a Seahawks game with friends after. We still have things that we do together. There's one couple I worked with where one person was evangelical Christian, the other person was a humanist, and on the kind of one week, person would go to church, the other week they would go and they would work, volunteer at a local homeless shelter, right? So they're still doing something that's honoring their shared beliefs and principles, but they're doing it in a different way, maybe, right? So figuring out how you find community and can still have a shared community is important. Another important part of this, right? And the third thing, and the thing that people bring up most often, is family, right? So okay, we you're a Jew, I'm a Muslim. We're gonna have children. How are we gonna raise them, right? That's obviously a huge and significant question to figure out. What I always encourage people to think about, especially when in a premarital context, is that if you are planning on having kids and raising them in a religion, that's many years away, right? From where you're at currently. So you can take your time with that question a little bit, right? A common popular thing people try to do these days is like, all right, well, we're going to let the kids choose, right? So there's some challenges with that, I would say. Children, when it comes to like spiritual development, they're not going to have any idea how to choose a world religion, right? Or like a belief structure. You have to present them with something, right? They're concrete thinkers early on in their lives. So you can't just say, do whatever you want, kid, right? You do have to introduce these ideas to them if you want to, right? If that's important to you. So finding some consensus with that is going to be important, right? But it's something you can take time with. So allow that to be a conversation that ages, right? Let's talk a little bit about how we're gonna honor both of our holidays, and then figure that out, and then okay, let's talk about do we want to educate them in any sort of parochial school with either of our beliefs, right? And allow these conversations to slowly develop until you arrive at more of a consensus. And it's really normal for that to be a challenging thing. That's where usually the rubber hits the road for some folks, where they're like, I don't know if we can do this, right? But I've seen many successful ways of doing that for couples. Like I mentioned, right? One couple I worked with, they're evangelical Christian and Jewish, and they would celebrate all of the holy days for each of those faiths, right? And it was a valuable thing, right? You got to be open-minded, obviously, when it comes to this, right? It can't be this perspective that my partner, the things that they care about are totally wrong, right? It has to be, you have to come at it from a place of openness. And if you can do that, then you can have a really deeply rich relationship that honors, multiple traditions. And I've seen many families that have that, and it's a really cool thing, right? And I think it allows the children growing up in those families to have a greater respect and understanding for where people come from, right? And their different ideas. So that's the family piece, and there's a lot more to say about that, right? I think I'll probably address that in the future in other videos, but that's the kind of starting point to think about. So like I said, values, community, and family, those are the big things you got to figure out moving forward. And the last thing I'll offer is that finding some way to have like a shared ritual of some sort, right, is really valuable, right? So if one of you believes heavily in meditation, the power of meditation, the other person in prayer, there's crossover there, right? We can engage in that kind of thoughtful time together, even if it's coming from different perspectives and has different underpinnings, right? That is a really valuable thing still to find when you can engage in some sort of spiritual expression with your partner, right? And a lot of world religions have some shared beliefs, right? Most world religions, for example, believe that helping the poor and needy is a valuable thing. So that's something that a lot of people can get behind, and you don't have to get in debates about why you're doing it, or what the kind of your inspiration for doing it is. you can just participate in that together, and that's a really positive thing. Now, in Launch to Land, in the premarital readiness course that I have online, I address a lot of these things, and I give you some more tools and more conversations to have. So if you're finding that you're in a situation where you're trying to discern, I am with someone, I love somebody who believes something different than I do, watch this video, go check out Launch to Land, and allow the questions that I ask there to guide you towards some healthy consensus. And that's a valuable thing to do. It's super important, I think, when you have different beliefs and different backgrounds to have intentional premarital conversations. And that's going to help you take off in the marriage you want. All right. Well, thank you for joining me today. As always, make sure you like and subscribe, and check out the website so you can get a sense for how the course could be helpful for you. Have a great day.